Let's do a little fun here. Kobe, toughest defender for you?
Tony Allen. That's easy. Yeah. Tony Allen. My fault.
Really?
Yeah, he was the only one that wasn't crying for help. Crying for help. Like, help down here, hey, help, double. Tony Allen would play straight up. He'd be physical. I could score 10 straight on him. He's not blinking. He's still here. He's still being physical. He's not backing down. Tony Allen by far.
Wow, I think you would be surprised by that, just because it's not a big name, not
at all.
Tony Allen by far. I finished playing against Tony Allen. I got scratch marks from here, and I love it.
What do you think about LeBron?
Yes, you heard that correctly. Kobe Bryant, one of the NBA's all-time greatest scorers, awarded Tony Allen with being the greatest defender that he ever matched up against. Interestingly enough, Kevin Durant, another one of the NBA's all-time great bucket getters, showered Allen with identical praise. For about a decade, Tony Allen had the challenge of matching up against the opponent's best perimeter player. He was a purebred defensive specialist, and it was a role that he thrived in for the majority of his career. Allen, who was born in the basketball powerhouse that is Chicago, attended Crane High School in his home state, where he was both a standout basketball and football player, alongside future NBA player Will Bynum. The whole story about how Allen got involved with football is actually quite fascinating. Back in 2014, Bynum told ESPN's Michael Wallace that academic eligibility was difficult for Allen when it wasn't basketball season, so he convinced Allen to join the football team as an incentive to help keep his grades up. But Tony Allen wasn't the name that everybody saw on the roster. He used a pseudonym, Antonio Brown. In a bizarre twist, it was Allen's dominance on the football field that caused him to quit the team. College coaches began taking an interest in Allen, but that wasn't allowed because he was academically ineligible. So as a result, Allen quit the team and basketball became his sole focus. Although Allen showcased remarkable talents on the basketball court, he had a difficult time finding the spotlight, especially playing against a guy like Will Bynum. Bynum was an absolute demon on the court and was arguably the best player in the state of Illinois. Following his time at Crane High School, Allen enrolled in Butler County Community College before leaving that school for Wabash Valley the following year. He thrived in both spots, averaging a little bit less than 16 points and about 6 rebounds per game across the 2 seasons. Tony Allen spent his entire basketball career as a grinder, so it's not a surprise that he dominated the dog-eat-dog landscape that is JUCO hoops. His impressive abilities as a two-way player drew the attention of legendary head coach Eddie Sutton, who at the time was coaching a defensive-minded squad at Oklahoma State. Allen's physical traits and lockdown mentality made him a perfect fit, and he began terrorizing the Big 12 almost immediately. In 2 seasons with the Cowboys, Allen started 82 games and occupied a massive role. As a result, he became a necessary but reliable contributor to OSU's success. While Allen's junior campaign was very impressive, it was his time as a senior that cemented him as a legitimate NBA prospect. He averaged 16 points, 5.5 rebounds, and 2.1 assists for a Cowboys team that, to this day, remains arguably the best in school history. That 2003-2004 Oklahoma State team accumulated a still-standing school record of 31 wins and wound up finishing 4th overall in the AP poll, the highest they finished since 1951 when they landed at number 2. For the NCAA tournament, they were awarded a 2 seed. Their first 3 playoff games were a breeze, with the average margin of victory being 16 points. OSU finally faced some resistance in the Elite 8 when they went up against the St. Joe's team led by Jameer Nelson and Delonte West. The Cowboys' smothering defense held the Eagles to just 38.6% shooting, and that allowed the Cowboys to narrowly escape with the 64-62 victory. With the national championship berth on the line, OSU faced off against a Georgia Tech team that featured Allen's childhood teammate Will Bynum as their 6th man. The Yellow Jackets played a fantastic game and handed the Cowboys a nail-biting 2-point loss just mere days after they were on the opposite end of such an outcome. Throughout the playoffs, Tony Allen maintained that all-around effectiveness that made the Cowboys so lethal. His postseason and regular season numbers were almost identical, with the only marked improvement coming in shooting, as he buried a staggering 57.4% of his shots overall. With the 2004 NBA draft looming, it was difficult to predict where Tony Allen would land. His stellar senior season led to him being named the Big 12 Player of the Year and also the conference tournament MVP, but that class in particular had a surplus of talented prospects, and while Tony Allen was an amazing defender and a capable scorer, he still had some unanswered questions, with the biggest one being, would he ever be able to lead a team as its primary facilitator or primary scorer? Most likely, that was not the case. Even still, Allen played hard and was an intense competitor, and those traits, coupled with his ability on defense, I feel helped keep him in the first round. Ultimately, the Boston Celtics selected him 25th overall, and Allen's first couple of seasons with the Celtics went about as well as you would expect out of a young player, minus the injuries he suffered in 2005 and 2006. Still, Allen showed flashes of being a capable NBA role player, especially on defense. In years 1 and 2, Allen averaged 2 steals per 36 minutes and added in 13.8 points. When given extended time, the young guard was a legitimate game changer on defense, but it was his patented intensity that severely hampered his minutes. Keeping with the per 36 minutes extrapolation, Allen also averaged 4.5 fouls per night. During his third season, Allen became more disciplined, but that damn knee injury halted his momentum. He earned a spot in the starting lineup in early December, and Doc Rivers steadily began to give Tony Allen more and more minutes. Before being ruled out officially on January 12th, there was a 14-game stretch where Tony Allen posted numbers that didn't resemble his at all. In total, he averaged 18.9 points on 53.7% shooting, 5.9 rebounds, and 2.6 steals. Weirdly enough, though, that stretch was the brightest part of his tenure in Boston. At no point was he able to replicate those numbers, and despite winning a title in 2008, he played just 65 minutes in 15 playoff games. When the Celtics returned to the finals 2 years later, Allen again had a limited role, averaging less than 15 minutes in that 7-game series against the Lakers. After 6 seasons with the Celtics, Allen decided to move on. He did all that he could in his limited time and sought a new challenge, later signing with the Memphis Grizzlies, an up-and-coming franchise who was developing rapidly under the tutelage of Lionel Hollins. Allen, who was just 29 at the time, was not only a veteran presence in the locker room, but still a capable player on both ends of the floor. Shortly after signing with Memphis, Tony Allen revealed that he felt, quote, overshadowed by the Celtics all-star wing duo of Ray Allen and Paul Pierce. Quote, being in Boston, I was kind of overshadowed by those guys. Here's a ball club who's on the rise, and a lot of guys can make names for themselves. Specifically, Tony Allen was talking about Memphis's up-and-coming core that included Mike Conley, Marc Gasol, OJ Mayo, and Rudy Gay. That first season, Allen, along with Zach Randolph, were the 2 elder statesmen for the Grizzlies. Randolph worked with Gay and Conley to keep the offense chugging along, while Allen focused on locking down the perimeter. Despite averaging less than 21 minutes a night, Allen was second on the team in total steals and led everybody in steals per game with 1.8. Additionally, he had the lowest defensive rating on the squad among anyone who played more than 250 minutes. Memphis went on to win 46 games that season and qualified for the playoffs as the 8th seed. They matched up with the Spurs in the first round and pulled off one of the unlikeliest upsets in NBA history. The Grizzlies' slow it down, grind it out mentality was a huge ingredient in their success. It was almost as vital as their talent on defense. Allen received a significant minutes boost in that series and spent the majority of the time guarding either Tony Parker or Manu Ginobili. The two averaged about 40 points between them. However, the Grizzlies' intimidating defense caused the Spurs' pass-heavy offense to wilt into isolation. Additionally, he forced Ginobili and Parker into 37 turnovers between themselves. In round 2, Memphis drew a matchup against the Oklahoma City Thunder, a team that contrasted the San Antonio Spurs to the maximum degree. While the Spurs focused on ball movement and working as a team, the Thunder ran their offense through their star-studded trio that included Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, and James Harden. Although Memphis stretched the series to 7 games, they lacked the overall firepower to compete offensively. Their perimeter defense was stout with Mike Conley and Tony Allen. They also had Marc Gasol patrolling the paint, and that allowed Zach Randolph and Rudy Gay to keep the offense operating at maximum efficiency. The only thing Memphis needed to become a full-fledged contender was another star on offense. Unfortunately, management never made that happen, and Memphis never realized their true potential. In the subsequent season, everything pretty much stayed the same in Memphis. The roster was the same, the coaching staff was the same, and the game plan was still the same. They grounded out and punished defenders on a nightly basis, with Tony Allen being one of the anchors of a top 5 defense. However, the Grizzlies' routinely anemic offense came around to bite them in their first round matchup against the Los Angeles Clippers. This playoff series is one of the stranger ones in NBA history because the Grizzlies should have beat the Clippers, but they also shouldn't have. And let me explain what I mean by that. The game went 7 games, and the Grizzlies forced 7 games after going down 3-1 heading into Game 5. Now, the strange thing about this is that the Clippers advanced to the second round despite having a negative point differential, and a large contributor to that was Memphis being unable to muster more than a measly 72 points in Game 7. During the summer of 2012, Memphis didn't make any significant roster changes. They didn't sign for anybody. They didn't trade for anybody who would have patched their considerable holes on offense, but their defense was so stifling that it almost didn't matter. However, if NBA history has taught us anything, it's that about 99% of all championship teams were balanced on offense and defense. Very rarely, and I can't think of any other team outside of the 04 Pistons, did a team that had almost no offensive firepower bring home a title. At any rate, the 2012-13 season was the best season the Grizzlies had during Tony Allen's tenure. The Grit-and-Grind Grizzlies had unshakable chemistry and suffocated anybody who matched up against them. Individually, Allen made his second straight all-defensive team and finished 5th in the Defensive Player of the Year voting, the second time in the last 3 years that he landed in the top 5. Upon reaching the postseason, Memphis got their revenge against the Clippers in the first round and then went on to defeat a depleted Oklahoma City Thunder team in round 2. In the conference finals, it was a rematch featuring the Spurs and the Grizzlies. San Antonio had learned from their previous matchup against Memphis and turned that once fortified defense into Swiss cheese. The Spurs made about 50% of their shots overall and boasted an offensive rating of 108.9, 12.1 points greater than what the Grizzlies had. As a result, the series was over in 4 games. From that point on, the Grizzlies failed to replicate the successes of that season. They stayed a solid regular season team, but in the postseason, they couldn't gain any momentum and were eliminated in the first round 3 of the following 4 years. Through all of the successes and the failures, one thing stayed consistent: Memphis's defense. They were consistently elite, and it was largely because Tony Allen produced at an all-defensive level until basically the end of his career. As a matter of fact, Tony Allen became the 6th oldest player to be selected to an all-defensive team when he landed on the second team in 2007 at the young age of 35. Shortly after that, Tony Allen retired from the NBA. He had a short stint with the New Orleans Pelicans during the 2017-18 season, but it was only about 20 games worth. While he's not the most decorated defender of all time, Tony Allen worked to gain success amongst his peers, and that's why so many of his contemporaries view him as one of the most just pesky defenders they've ever gone up against. First team TA will be hard to forget as time wears on. He was a purebred lockdown defender, a blue-collar worker who studied his opponents like he was prepping for a bar exam. Year after year, coaches trusted him and leaned on him to have the most difficult job in the NBA, locking down an elite offensive player. And he took on the challenge willingly, year after year after year. And I believe that if Father Time didn't step in, Tony Allen would still be happily doing this to this day. As always, Thank you guys so much for coming to hang out with me today. If this is your first time, welcome. If you are returning, welcome back. Everything I'm associated with is in the description box below. That's social medias, the podcast that I host. It's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, pretty much wherever podcasts are hosted. If you could also do me a favor, leave a like on the video if you liked it, a dislike if you didn't, and if you want to see more content like this, be sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. And with that, I'll catch you guys in the next one.